What happened at 9/11 is we didn't have a strategy, we didn't have bipartisan agreement, we didn't have American understanding of it, and we had instead a policy coup in this country. A coup. A policy coup. Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11, and I went downstairs. I was leaving the Pentagon, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. And I said, why? He said, we don't know. He pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran.
This is a U.S. mistake that started 7 years ago. And I remember the day on your show when President Obama said, Assad must go. And I looked at you and Joe and I said, huh? How's he going to do that? Where's the policy for that?
Right.
And we know they sent in the CIA to overthrow Assad. The CIA and Saudi Arabia together in covert operations tried to overthrow Assad. It was a disaster. Eventually it brought in both ISIS as a splinter group to the jihadists that went in. It also brought in Russia. And so we have made a proxy war in Syria. It's killed 500,000 people, displaced 10 million. And I'll say predictably so, because I predicted it 7 years ago that there was no way to do this and that it would make a complete chaos. But then all the establishment, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Pentagon, everybody said, no, no, that's irresponsible. But his instinct is right. Get out. We've done enough damage, 7 years. And now we really risk a confrontation with Russia that is extraordinarily dangerous, reckless.
If we just step away from it, as attractive as that feels to us, I don't think it's the right decision either for the country or for the international community.
I don't think it's attractive, but I think we have to understand how this happened. This happened because of us. These 600,000 are not just incidental. We started a war to overthrow a regime. It was covert. It was Timber Sycamore. People can look it up. The CIA operation, together with Saudi Arabia. Still it's shrouded in secrecy, which is part of the problem in our country. A major war effort, shrouded in secrecy, never debated by Congress, never explained to the American people, signed by President Obama, never explained. And this created chaos.
What was your reaction? Did the White House undercut Ambassador Haley?
Well, I think before you talk about sanctions, we ought to talk about, what evidence is there that that Russia was complicit in this attack. In fact, for that matter, I still look at the attack and say, Assad either must be the dumbest dictator on the planet or maybe he didn't do it. I have yet to see evidence that he did do it. The intelligence agencies claim they have that evidence. But think about it. Does it make any sense? He's been winning the war for the last couple of years. The only thing that would galvanize the world to attack Assad directly is a chemical attack.
It's hard to know exactly what's happening in Syria right now. I'd like to know specifically how that release of chemical gas, if it did occur, and it looks like it did, how that occurred. Because frankly, I don't think Assad would have done that. It does not serve his interests. It would tend to draw us into that civil war even further.
Who do you think is behind it? Who do you think is behind it?
You've got a war going on over there. But
you're more inclined to believe the position of what Bashar al-Assad is saying and what the Russians are saying right now than more inclined to believe what even your colleagues here in the United States believe is truth, that this is Assad, and what human rights observers over there say is Assad?
I don't think it would have served Assad's purposes to do a chemical attack on his people. So it's hard for me to understand why he would do that if he did.
Congressman Tom Massey, thanks for your time.
What we've heard from either Sergei Lavrov or indeed the Russian ambassador has made it more difficult for the UK to launch any kind of attack without putting it to Parliament?
Yeah, I think quite apart from all that, the debate that seems to be missing from this is, and this was actually mentioned by the ambassador, was what possible motive might have triggered Syria to launch a chemical attack at this time in this place. You know, the Syrians are winning. Don't take my word for it. Take the American military's word for it. General Virgil, the head of CENTCOM, he said to Congress the other day, Assad has won this war, and we need to face that. So, and then you got last week the statement by Trump, or the tweet by Trump, that America had finished with ISIL and we were going to pull out soon, very soon. And then suddenly you get...
Okay, I'm very sorry. You've been very patient waiting for us, but we do need to leave it there. I'm very sorry. Thank you very much indeed. More to come on Sky News. Do stay tuned.
You talk about the corporate media, the Western media, the lies, and all of this. Could you explain what you think might be the agenda from us in the Western media, and why we should lie, why the international organizations on the ground should lie, why we shouldn't believe all these absolutely documentable facts that we see from the ground, these hospitals being bombed, these civilians who are talking about the atrocities that they have been experiencing. How can you justify calling all of us liars?
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, there are certainly honest journalists amongst the very compromised establishment media. Let's start with your second question. So, international organizations on the ground. Tell me which ones are on the ground in eastern Aleppo. Yeah, okay, I'll tell you, there are none. There are none. These organizations are relying on the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in Coventry, UK, and which is one man. They're relying on compromised groups like the White Helmets, which, let's talk about the White Helmets. The White Helmets were founded in 2013 by a British ex-military officer. They have been funded to the tune of $100 million by the US, UK, and Europe, and other states. They purport to be rescuing civilians in eastern Aleppo and Idlib, yet no one in eastern Aleppo has heard of them. And I say no one, bearing in mind that now 95% of these areas of eastern Aleppo are liberated. The White Helmets purport to be neutral, yet they can be found carrying guns and standing on the dead bodies of Syrian soldiers. And their video footage actually contains children that have been recycled in different reports. So you can find a girl named Aya who turns up in a report in month, say, August, and she turns up in the next month in 2 different locations. So they are not credible. The SOHR is not credible. Unnamed activists are not credible. Once or twice, maybe, but every time, not credible. So your sources on the ground, you don't have them.
It's not clear whether it happened or not, because how can you verify a video? You have a lot of fake videos now, and you have the proof that those videos were fake, like the White Helmets, for example. They are Al-Qaeda, they are Nusra Front, who shaved their beard, wore white hats, and appeared as humanitarian heroes, which is not the case. The same people were killing Syrian soldiers, and you have the proof on the internet anyway. So the same thing for that chemical attack. We don't know whether those dead children, were they killed in Khan Sheikhoun, were they dead at all? Who committed the attack, if there was attack? What the material? You have no information at all, nothing at all, no one investigated.
So you think it's a fabrication?
Definitely, 100% for us it's fabrication. We don't have arsenal, we're not going to use it. And you have many indications if you don't have the proof, because no one has concrete information or evidences. But you have indications. For example, less than 2 weeks, around 10 days before that attack, the terrorists were advancing in many fronts, including the suburbs of Damascus and Hama, which is not far from Khan Sheikhoun. Let's suppose we have this arsenal, and let's suppose that we have the will to use it. Why didn't we use it when we were retreating and the terrorists were advancing? Actually, the timing of that attack, or alleged attack, was when the Syrian army was advancing very fast, and actually the terrorists were collapsing. So why to use it if you have it and if you have the will? Why to use it at that timing, not when you are in a difficult situation? Logically, this is first. Second, if you want to use it, if you have it and if you want to use it, again, this is, if we suppose, why to use it against civilians, not to use it against the terrorists that we are fighting?
We have some disagreements at this moment, but I don't want to argue with the Colonel.
I appreciate it.
There is zero evidence to tie Assad to that gas attack.
Well,
Zero.
let's leave that aside. The United Nations says there is. The people in the area say there are.
The United Nations has not said that.
Nations around there have said that they have seen evidence.
So Turkey has said it, Professor. The United States has said it.
I think that that's a fruitless argument, but let's talk about how Russia is perceiving this right now.
It's not a fruitless argument if the Russians think somebody's running false flags to get Russia and the United States into a war.
So you genuinely think Russia thinks that someone else is doing this to make them look bad?
Let me answer your question because it's more important. What you just reported that Putin said today, it seemed quite harsh, correct? You agree. That's your headline. But there was something harsher said, and this has not been reported. The second most important man in the Russian government is the prime minister. His name is Dmitry Medvedev. He sat in for Putin as president when Secretary of State Clinton and Obama tried the so-called reset. He is, inside Russia, in the power elite, considered the most pro-Western member of the Putin leadership, all right? Yesterday, he said, it may have been the day before because of the time difference, he said, in the aftermath of this Syrian event, but also in connection with what people are calling Kremlin Gate in Washington. He said, Russian-American relations are utterly ruined. I don't ever remember a Soviet or Russian leader saying that. And secondly, he said, you probably noticed this, we are at the brink of war with the United States.
We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. Seven countries in 5 years. It was a pretty stunning thing. You mean the purpose of the military is to start wars and change governments? It's not to sort of deter conflict? We're going to invade countries? And, they wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, make it under our control. It went back to those comments in 1991. Now, did anybody ever tell you that? Was there a national dialogue on this? Did senators and congressmen stand up and denounce this plan? Was there a full-fledged American debate on it? Absolutely not. And there still isn't. And that's why we're failing in Iraq. Because Iran and Syria know about the plan. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you're an American, you ought to be concerned about the strategy of the United States in this region. What is our aim? What is our purpose? Why are we there? Why are Americans dying in this region? That is the issue.